So, your book is Heaven Meets Earth, a 40-day journey of transformation through the Nicene Creed. Why do you think that this topic in this book in particular aligns with what I'm talking about here on Minimalist Moms? Intentionality, simplicity.
Yeah, so an intentional life, I think, always starts slow. And so like in the ancient church traditions, they have something called the ascetic life, which is just how do you train your body in order to train your soul? And
Mm,
so the book that I wrote is just a little invitation into that using the Nicene Creed. So the Nicene Creed is just like foundational stuff for what every Christian believes.
mhm,
And this is just an invitation to take a slow 5, 10, 15 minutes every day for 40 days to
mhm.
reorient your life towards what you should have intention for, which is
Sure.
living the good life, capital
Yeah.
G.
Yeah. Thanks for talking about that here at the beginning, because I do think that sometimes people just question who I picked to interview and the why behind it. And to me, this is being really intentional when it comes to, well, not just the Nicene Creed, but our faith. And I think there's so many mixed messages right now
Mhm.
about orthodoxy and or just confusion in our spiritual spaces. So I appreciate just kind of a solid foundation here in this book that you've written.
Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to do, so given how crazy, like the world is crazy and it keeps getting crazier. And
Yeah.
so one of the things for me was hoping, I'm a big believer in beauty. Like I know people say like, don't judge a book by its cover. And I'm like, please
Hmm.
judge my book by its cover. I
Hmm.
worked really hard on making some good art. So there are these ancient ways of reading. You have like the Lectio Divina, which is like a spiritual way of reading, and it's a contemplative way of reading. And so half of the book is set up to be a Lectio style, where you're going to read part of the creed. And then I wrote like a theological and devotional reflection with some questions. But half of it is also a kind of Visio Divina style, which
Hmm.
is like prayerful and contemplative seeing. And
Okay.
so I think beauty will save the world, right? That's Dostoevsky. I think beauty is what
Mhm.
transforms culture, our hearts, everything. We let beauty speak to our hearts, and then we orient our whole life around the things that we love and that are attractive to us.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to do was invite people into a kind of spiritual formation and intentionality, not necessarily just through the things they're thinking, but the things that they're loving, the things they're beholding, their
Yeah.
ordinary life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When was the creed written? How long ago?
It had its 1700-year anniversary, I think, last year. So it was written in 325 originally,
Okay.
Council of Nicaea.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I think for me, I felt really comfortable looking to the past. Obviously, the past isn't a great representation for everything that should be standard to this day. But I think specifically for me with my spirituality, kind of looking to the past the way that people really did, in a sense, just simplify it because there wasn't as much distraction and noise. I think that's why I so appreciate the Nicene Creed. But again, curious to what drew you to it, and again, using it as a framework for this book.
Yeah, so I think that taking the ancient truths of our Christian faith and learning how to apply them in the modern world is one of the most important things you can do. So the creed is like, it's a time, it has formed the church. So in the opening chapters, we think it's easy to conceive of that council. So in 325, they had a council and it was a big theological thing that was going on. And it's easy to conceive of a group of people sitting down and writing the creed. But what ended up happening is the creed shaped the entire lifestyle of the church. It was a thing that they would recite week after week. It's a thing that people would recite at baptism. And so the reason I chose the creed is I have this belief that if you get the core stuff in you, the fundamental things in you, in a way that transforms your heart, it is going to bear fruit in every area of your life. And so we get so focused, I think, on all these like nitty gritty minutia things, like, how do I apply this super obscure thing to my life? If I don't solve this little puzzle, how am I
Mhm.
going to live? And this is what you're about. What if you just took a huge step back and got the right things settled in your life? And a
Yeah.
lot of that is removal, right? So like when I
Mhm.
mention stuff about the ancient church, they have the view of the ascetic life, which is like training your will through small concrete acts, like these repeatable disciplines that
Mm-hmm.
teach your body and teach your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is removal. So if you want
Mm-hmm.
to learn how to be grateful, fasting really helps, praying
Mm-hmm.
really helps, but like not just randomly.
Mm-hmm.
Keep a prayer rule,
Mm-hmm.
limit your impulses, and you start teaching your body, you start teaching your soul, and you start orienting yourself towards the good. And so what I think with the creed is, when we have for the church such a rich foundation,
Mm-hmm.
we think we need to keep reinventing the wheel, but no, you could just let the foundation structure your life and kind of just let everything else be an expression from there.
Mm-hmm. And you say it stabilizes us as modern believers because again, everything seems to be in flux, which is, I guess, always has been true. But yeah, even more so right now. And I think churches want to provide us with all these bells and whistles of really setting the tone and setting the experience for us. But it's like, no, there is so much beauty in just these simple, straightforward truths. At least there is for me.
Yeah, well, it's very easy. And I don't want to, for anyone listening down the road, I'm not knocking anything. So
Sure.
please don't hear it that way.
Yeah.
But when spirituality is presented to people as like a product, and what I mean is like whole cloth, like you give the problem and my product is the solution, and it ends up being a book, or it ends up being a sermon series, or everything is hype, or everything is whatever. We wonder why
Yeah.
we feel the same disruption when we buy the new iPhone and we have it and we feel great for a second and then we feel horrible.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these things, it's like a spiritual formation by marketing, by
Mm-hmm.
advertising, by tugging at our psychological heartstrings. And I think if you go back to the foundation and you say, listen, I'm not going to buy in to the framework of the world. I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
try to save my soul through like cliches and platitudes. I'm going to try to save my soul through goodness, truth, and beauty, and the things
Mm-hmm.
that the church has always used. And like
Mm-hmm.
historically, you can watch how the creed has been used through the ages. And in a lot of ways, like the modern evangelical or Protestant movements have lost some of these things. And
Yeah.
so looking back to the past and then learning how to interpret these ancient truths into our holy, like into our ordinary lives. That's the big thing for me. I think your ordinary life is your context
Mm.
for enjoying goodness, enjoying truth, and enjoying beauty. And it's your way to accept God's invitation for transformation. I don't need to be some big famous pastor, huge platform. I'm a dad of 2 kids. We have another one on the way. And this is my wife and my kids are like my whole life.
Yeah.
And so in the mess of changing diapers and I mean everything that goes with being a parent,
Mm-hmm.
the creed gets to shape, and I do mean that genuinely. So like I think about these things pretty often. So when I'm going about my day and I'm thinking through the creed, because I'll have it memorized and I'll just be going through it, and I'll say something like, I believe in God the Father Almighty. And I
Mm-hmm.
think like that God is my father. We
Mm.
use father for a reason. I'm a father to these kids, so his love should be influencing my love for them. And you
Yeah.
just start letting these thoughts reshape your everyday life. That's why I wrote the book, for the
Yeah.
ordinary person.
Have you found that in speaking with people or just in researching that there are misconceptions about the creed or even religious history in a sense? Like I said, we don't necessarily want to look at everything as maybe the standard of how we should, like every culture is constantly evolving. But yeah, what are misconceptions and or pushback that you've heard?
It kind of depends.
Okay.
There is a little bit of controversy, and this gets like deep in the weeds. But so there's like the Catholics and the Orthodox. They had a schism in 1054.
Uh-huh.
And so one of the little controversies is this phrase in the creed, and the Son, which is the filioque thing. So there's a big debate around stuff like that. But like for normal people, I think the
Yeah.
biggest thing is a lot of people in the modern, more evangelical spaces don't know about the creed at all. They don't know when it was written, what it was about.
Mhm.
They don't know about St. Athanasius, for example. And so I think some of the problems that you bump into would be like kind of, not ignorance isn't the right word though. Like, that's an offensive way. It's just an unknowing. And
Yeah.
so if you don't know, you can't let shape. And so I remember my wife and I, we try to live as minimal as possible. And I'm not just like saying that just because I'm on the podcast. We have had to do a variety of things in life to like downsize and make
Yeah.
things work. And before you know about intentionality and having things in your life, just the things that orient you towards the good, structuring your life around the things that you need, not being owned or controlled by products and whatever, or getting caught up in these things, you just kind of are led because you have nothing teaching you or guiding you. And I do believe it's the same with the creed. So if you don't know and you don't have these truths settled deep inside of you, then when things pop up, that's what like the good book says, you'll be tossed to and fro by every changing wind of doctrine. And that doesn't just mean like heretics, it means secular doctrines. It means atheistic doctrines. It means like the whole world wanting to rip you apart and lead you astray. And
Yeah.
so I think part of it is just, hey, we don't know what we could be connected to and what kind of impact it could have on our life if we let it shape us and remake us.
Without being redundant, and sorry if this is a redundant question, but I am curious to know about the ancient rhythms and practices that we could return to and how those could be of benefit to us today.
Totally. So I'm an Eastern Orthodox catechumen, so we're converting to Eastern Orthodoxy. So
Oh, okay.
there are like things you can do for the ascetic life. So there's like fasting rules. So you have fasting and feasting days. And
Yeah.
those, I mean, that in it, like even just full stop there, we could keep going with prayer and almsgiving and all these things you're supposed to do. But a fasting rule in the modern day of excess and indulgence and doom scrolling and I want, and having to be like, no, I can't have meat right now. I can't have cheese right now. I actually need to say no to most food today and take time and pray. One of the things, so St. Basil said this. He was like a Cappadocian church father in around the year 300. He said, we fell from Eden because we didn't know how to fast. And when you think about a minimal life, an intentional life, to be like, listen, because we couldn't say no to one fruit, we lost paradise. When I think about ancient rhythms, a fasting rule is so
Mm.
important. Teaching yourself, body and soul, heart,
Hmm.
soul, mind, and strength to learn how to say no.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you will be so far ahead in your spiritual walk, just in life in general. Anyways, so that's a big one. We have other things, like we have morning prayers and evening prayers. We have tons of little things that like shape how we do things. One of them, for example, so I'm so sorry I'm ranting. It's not a redundant
No,
question. It's
it's
a great
great.
question.
Yeah.
For every vice that we have, there's like a corresponding virtue. And
Mm.
so you can think about like with gluttony is the vice and fasting would be the virtue. Like, how do you teach yourself to live a self-controlled life? You have to fast to get there.
Hmm.
And so one of them is, my wife and I have been chatting about this a ton, has been in our world of noise and constant consumption and everybody needing to share their opinion.
Hmm.
What if we all just stopped talking for a little bit?
Mm.
Like just stopped
Yeah.
and just feel what that would do to us.
Yeah.
And Blaise Pascal said in Pensées, like about all of men's problems, humanity's problems, can be summed up in the fact that he can't sit in a dark room alone for an hour. Because what
Mm.
comes up is all of our insecurities and things we need and things we want. And so I just imagine, Josh, if you just closed your mouth for a second, what would come up? This desperate need to be heard. Why do I need to be heard? Like, who am I? So anyways, those are like, there's all these I'm a big simplicity guy.
Sure.
When I think about the practices, I'm not thinking about all these grand things up on a stage. I'm thinking about like doing the dishes, saying your prayers every morning and every night. I'm thinking about fasting. I'm thinking about silence or contemplation. I'm thinking about like, hey, maybe people should just get a dumb phone, and maybe
Mm.
you should use a smartphone for like maybe an hour a day. Maybe you need to just totally rethink your life to orient it against fighting sin
Hmm.
and aiming at the good, or being
Hmm.
united with Christ rather than like a hierarchy of values. If your highest hierarchy, if top of the thing is being united with Christ, then we should be willing to do almost anything to get there. But
Mm.
oftentimes we have those things inverted. Be like, well, anyways, I could go on forever. I'm so sorry, Diane.
No, it's
But
great.
we,
This is
yeah,
great. I think that there are people that would suggest some of these rituals and traditions are legalistic. And maybe that's why we fell away from them, because they felt like a bunch of rules we had to follow that were oppressive or weren't convenient to us. I find the discipline of some of this freeing. That would be my response. But how do we combat, I don't want to say the naysayers, but how do we
yeah,
combat that
yeah.
perspective?
It's a great question. And I think there's two answers to it. Number one is having a proper perspective on what these things are. And so when you go back to the ancient church, the craziest thing about the ancient church is you can have Jesus, the apostles, and then the church apostolic fathers and the church fathers. So like they are tightly coupled. Clement of Rome is mentioned in Romans 16. So in Romans, so like we are tightly coupled with the early church. And when they start doing these practices, you have to ask yourself why. Like if the early church was doing this, were they legalist? Did they literally hear the Christ message and say, hey, let's change it immediately? So I think it would kind of be like, is it legalistic for me to wake up and go to the gym and eat healthy? No, I'm trying to keep my body healthy and strong so I can love people properly. Are there times I don't want to do it? Every damn day. I would love to eat cake all day and not have to go for a jog and not have to
Sure.
go to the gym. But what
Yeah.
does that do? That impacts directly my ability to love and live in the world. And so we've lost sight of the proper perspective of training our souls to love God properly and love our neighbor. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing is if we get divorced from the source, which
Mm-hmm.
and say the creed as a gateway into that, then of
Mm-hmm.
course it feels like legalism. If I tell you you have to do your prayers every day and you say why, and I say, well, I don't know. You're like,
Yeah.
well, then that's legalism. I'm not connected to anything. But if I say you do
Mm-hmm.
your prayers every day and you say why, and I say because you can be united with Christ and you can
Mm-hmm.
heal your soul and you can love the people around you and you live in a whole structure and rhythm of fasting and feasting, of silence and celebration, then it starts to make sense. You're teaching your body this liturgical way of being. And so, you know what? Generally, I think part of the reason we think it's legalistic is we live in a very individualistic, my way or the highway society. So someone's like, well, you can't tell me what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is, yeah, I can.
Mm-hmm.
I totally can. And he's
Yeah.
like, if you want to live the good life,
Mm-hmm.
this is the thing that's crazy. We all want to live the good life, like capital G, capital L. And
Mm-hmm.
we all think we shouldn't have to do anything to get there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even rest is a war. Being minimal is a war. So if you
Mm-hmm.
want the benefits of not being distracted and plagued and enslaved by the modern excess culture, you have to fight and discipline yourself to say no to things every time you go out. I go out in their sales. I'm like, that'd be a nice sweater.
Yeah. Yeah,
Don't
for
need it.
sure. Well, and I think that for people listening, some of this seems too challenging, or they don't want to implement some of these rituals and traditions in their own life. I would just ask, are you, I don't want to say, are you content with where you're at? How does your faith walk look right
Yeah.
now? Does it seem shallow? Does it seem performative? Does it seem, yeah, like you want more? It's like maybe tap back into some of these things that do seem difficult and challenging. Like you said, eating, who wouldn't want to eat dessert all day, every day? But honestly, when I do that, I feel like crap. I actually
Yeah.
do feel like crap. You think this thing will lead you to abundance, and actually it's the inverse. The discipline leads to abundance. And again, there are days to feast, but
Mhm.
there are those days to fast. So yeah, I
That's
don't know if you
so,
want to say any of
oh
that.
yeah, that's so powerful. Like you pick your hard. It's really
Yeah.
hard being unhealthy because it
Yeah.
does hurt your body, it does destroy you, it makes you sick and all these things. And then it's really hard being healthy because you have to
Hmm.
discipline yourself, but you have to pick your heart. And then I
Hmm.
think the other thing that's so important is like we have our God, like our heavenly Father is like I don't beat my kids up because they can't live an ascetic life at my level. I'm
Sure.
37. They're
Yeah.
3. I don't
Yeah.
expect my son to be like, hey, buddy, we're going for like a 10-kilometer jog and we're going to go to the gym. He's be like, sorry, dude, I just want to play trains.
Yeah.
And so like God sees us and be like, if you're like, to use a fitness analogy, if you're like a couch potato spiritually, you have not trained your soul. You haven't
Hmm.
even conceived of this idea of like, I should be training my soul to love what is good and love
Hmm.
what I ought to love.
Hmm.
Then like maybe what you do is you just do the Jesus prayer, which is,
Hmm.
Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And maybe you do it 2 times in the morning and 2 times at night. And maybe after the first few days, you do 3 times in the morning and 3 times at night. You have to build up an appetite for discipline. That's why I wrote the book. It is simple and it is very beauty forward and sensory in the sense of engaging, where
Hmm.
like it is okay to start small. That's how we
Hmm.
all start. You have to
Hmm.
start small, and you have a savior who is very aware of our weaknesses and knows the things that we can and cannot do and doesn't expect more from us than we can give. Now, like that's just good fatherhood, right?
Hmm.
Saying like,
Hmm.
listen, you do need to grow. You cannot stay where you are. Look at all the longing and yearning you have. And the best way to tell what that is look what you go to when you're feeling empty. Do you go to
Hmm.
food? Do you go to doom scrolling? Do you go to porn? Do you go to
Hmm.
distraction? Do you go to like over the top working out? Or do you go to
Hmm.
what do you go to? Or do you go to Christ? And if you
Yeah.
don't go to Christ, then the question becomes like, okay, what am I loving instead of him? And that's
Hmm.
just what you have to teach your body and your soul. And I'm a big body person.
Hmm.
So like I think a lot of times in the church we believe that our spiritual walk is primarily like intellectual and spiritual,
Hmm.
when in reality like the full person is body and soul. And so like
Yeah.
if you wake up in the morning and you have these embodied routines that you buy into. So you wake up and you're looking at your phone, and then that's preaching to you. You're teaching your body, you're teaching your soul, you're using your body to teach your soul. This
Yeah.
is what we value most. But if you wake up and you say your prayers, that's a bit of a different game. Um,
Yeah.
and so I just think these things, Diane, are such a good question, because I don't want people to feel, you don't need to feel bad that you can't have like the ascetic life of the saints, or
Hmm.
like your hero, or like how come
Hmm.
I can't go sit in that dark room alone for an hour? Me neither.
Hmm.
5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Like we're all on the path. But it is just so important to learn how to say no so you can say a better yes.
For sure. As we wrap up here, we didn't mention that you are an artist and a theologian, but you are an artist. And I am curious to know how that has helped you connect deeper to your faith.
Yeah. So I believe like God is the source of all goodness and all truth and all beauty. And
Hmm.
so anything that's good finds its source in him. Anything that's true finds its source in him. And anything that's beautiful finds its source in him. And so there's a lot of things you can learn about God through the beauty that's all around you. And so as an artist, I have like a very narrow definition of an artist. So and if I people can disagree with me, it's fine. I don't think everyone is an artist. I think everyone can be creative. I think artists are the people that if you don't create your art, whether it's writing or whether it's visual or dance or any category, you die, your soul withers up. So it's part of my language and it's part of how I consume the world around me. And the beautiful thing about art is it's eyes to see. And so there's things that God is revealing to me that I'm seeing in his creation, that I'm seeing in the lives of the people around me or in the life of the church. And then I'm interpreting it visually. And there's things you can do visually that you can't do with just words. So one of the things in the book, for example, will be you'll have like this truth statement, and then day one, say we believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. You do like a theological thing, but then day two is the same thing from a artistic perspective. But with art, you can do like 7 symbolic biblical references to God as Father. And what it does to your soul is you can consume it in one moment. So you don't have to go read 7 stories. You can see one beautiful kaleidoscope of God's fatherhood wrapped up. And it can give you eyes to see what it means to be a father and a son or a daughter afresh. Does that make sense? So art for me and beauty for me has always been a gateway to see things more clearly. And it's what I want to do for others.
That's so good. I had Jake, hold on, what was his name?
Oh, Jake Weidman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had Jake Weidman on the podcast about a year ago, and he was talking about his art as well as just a form of worship. And that the whole episode was about that. It was awesome. I'll put it in the show notes because I highly recommend listening to it. But yeah, I think I agree with you. Not everyone is an artist but creative, but those that are should be doing so, because you're doing the world a disservice if you're not putting your art out there. And you said you did do the art in your book, correct?
Yep. Yeah. So this is, one second. This is all me.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Which is
so
cool.
Yeah,
which
really
was a blast.
I did for my book. I took the majority of the photos in there because it was
I
like
love
little
that.
mantras. And so I wanted, I don't know, you just see these stock images and I'm like, I have a picture of my son that's way cuter than that. Maybe that's just his mother speaking.
Yeah. But it is true. I mean, like, and that's the thing. That's part of like this human thing that is so, this is just tangential, but I would always take that which is human and personal and ordinary over something like optimized and stock.
Yeah.
And so there's something really beautiful for me. I love the fact that the words are mine and the art is mine, like the book is mine, as in these are my loaves and fishes. And I'm not the best artist and I'm not the best writer, but the good Lord can use it and multiply.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Josh, where can listeners grab a copy of your book, connect with you online, see more of your art if they want to do so?
My books are available like on wherever books are sold, so like Amazon, etc. If you're interested in what I'm up to, I have an Instagram called Sword and Pencil. I have a Substack called Everyday Saints. And then I've got this is the Heaven Meets Earth is my second book. It's like a devotional style book. I have a book that came out just over a year ago called Room for Good Things to Run Wild, How Ordinary People Become Everyday Saints. And then I'm working on my next book right now. Actually, the due date is today. So that's all of my stuff. That's where I am, just on Instagram and Substack.
Perfect. Well, I didn't tell you this, but I always ask my guests 2 final questions here at the very end to get to know you a little bit better, just more rapid fire. The first one is, what has been a beneficial resource in your life that you want to share with the listeners? And I'm not going to let you say the Nicene Creed.
Yeah, or my books. You know what's really beneficial? My book.
Yeah.
Beneficial resource that has been transformative to me. I'm a big proponent of just literature. So like I fell in love with reading. How do I say this properly? I don't think we are rationally taken out of something we were never rationally bought into. So I think we have to learn to speak the language of the heart. And so for me, what I did is I just fell in love with literature. I just read all the great novels. Well, not all of them, but I've been consuming them for the past 30 years, 25 years of my life. And what that taught me from a resource perspective, I can give you my favorite books, but what it taught me was like the truth lived out. Like books give you eyes to see yourself through other characters. That's what good film does. That's what all good art does. And so the resource for me was like, I just needed to learn to interpret living properly. You can hear a sermon or read a book about sin, or you could go read a picture of Dorian Gray. And you can be like, you can make a deal with the devil if you want, but it will ruin you. Doesn't matter if you're a hypocrite. It will kill everyone around you. And eventually your time will come. You can wonder about if you're cursed in the sense of, I grew up in this family. Am I doomed to repeat the sins of my fathers? Am I stuck, bound by all these things that have formed me? And then you can go read East of Eden. And be like, no, you may choose to live a good life, or you may not choose to live a good life, but you will choose. So there's all these things that were so beneficial for me that you just develop an appetite for reading, and it'll teach you things you just never thought imaginable.
Yeah, so good. I absolutely love reading as well. All right, final question for you. What is something you can't stop talking about?
Oof. What am I super into right now? This is going to sound crazy, but like real estate, because we're selling our house, so we're trying to move into a new one. So I am like, when I say real estate, I'm super into like interior design right now, super into like landscape. So if I was ever to get a beer or a coffee with someone, they'd be like, "Hey, what are you reading?" I'd be like, "Oh, I have like 4 books on interior design right now. And I think what
Yeah.
I would like to do is blah, blah, blah." Other than that, I mean, like like the thing that I write about and am consumed by is your embodied reality should teach you spiritual things, and you should
Mhm.
be able to interpret the spiritual world through embodied practices. So that wedding
Mhm.
of the two leading you to Christ is
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Yeah. So good. Where do you live?
We live West Coast Canada, so we're
Oh,
in British
Canada.
Columbia.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay. Cool. I'm in Ohio.
oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice,
Um, I just got my real estate license, so I've been kind of working with the MLS, like the system here, just kind of looking at real estate in general. But
totally.
yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
It's like
Well,
a fascinatingly endless topic
it
because
is.
you're
It
like,
is.
when
It
was
is
this house
fascinating.
built? And so right now, okay, if you want to hear something so weird, I'm like, I don't want to buy a house that's newer than like 95 because all the wood is a different kind of wood. It's more
Yep.
dense back in the day. It will last forever because they didn't have treatment stuff. So like for us right now, when I say I'm into real estate and interior design, I'm like deep in the weeds of like, okay, I want to buy a house. It's a forever home, blah, 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 all these things.
Yeah. No, I get you. My house was built in 1842, so
Oh, come on. Yeah, you got good wood.
yeah, yeah, for sure. The room I'm in right now, I don't know what year this part was built. The addition is back towards the back. So,
Mhm.
anyways, I totally get it. But again, this conversation I think it'll be really rich to someone's day and someone's walk right now. Like I said, the challenge to people is if you are feeling performative or superficial, shallow, maybe start practicing some of these ancient rituals, traditions, reading the Nicene Creed. I just really appreciate you sharing it today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Diane. I appreciate it.